Hello, I'm Ken Carpenter, and this is Invest AI Savvy, where AI powers smart investing. Saturday, May 2nd, 2026. This is the week in review. 20 to 1. That's the BuzzSurge Z-score of today's signal of the day, a mid-cap Russell 2000 name that just crossed 11 independent quality gates and is carrying 38% short interest into a week where institutions are building unusual options positions. That convergence step is the highest we've seen in weeks. Today, we're walking through that signal in full. We're recapping the names BuzzPulse surfaced this week that actually delivered between Monday and Friday, and we're naming the greed score leaders where social noise is running hot, but the quality gates didn't quite open. So let's get into it. The signal of the day is SoundHound, ticker SOUN, a mid-cap equity trading at $9.56. The convergence depth is 11 independent signals, which means 11 different layers of the system: social surge detection, sentiment analysis, momentum confirmation, options flow intelligence, short squeeze potential, all pointed at the same name at the same time. That's rare. The BuzzSurge Z-score is 20.1. For context, anything above 3 is elevated attention. Anything above 6 is explosive. 20.1 means SoundHound is getting 20 times its normal baseline mention volume, and it's not random chatter. It's coordinated conviction. Sentiment sits at plus 0.40. Momentum is confirmed, and here's where it gets interesting. Short interest is 38%. That's more than a third of the float sold short, and it's sitting there while unusual options activity is firing. The options intelligence layer is telling us institutions are positioning, and the flow direction confirms the bullish social sentiment. That's a squeeze setup if the name catches a bid. Earnings are 5 days out on May 7th, which sits inside our look-ahead window and adds event risk to the trade. Let me explain what convergence depth means, because it's doing the heavy lifting in this signal. Most names that spike on social media are one-dimensional. Convergence is different. Convergence means multiple independent intelligence streams: social surge, sentiment polarity, momentum confirmation, options positioning, short interest mechanics, quality screening, are all firing on the same ticker at the same time without knowing about each other. The more layers that converge, the higher the probability that something real is happening beneath the surface noise. 11 layers on SoundHound today is a strong convergence signal, and that's why it's locked as the signal of the day. I'm not telling you to buy it. I'm just telling you it crossed the system's huge quality gates today. Now, here's the part of the show I've been waiting all week to do: the week in review. This is the segment that separates BuzzPulse from every other social intelligence platform on the internet. We don't show you the signals and disappear. We come back on Saturday and tell you what those signals did. Now, let me walk you through the 4 names from this week's brief that worked and what the system was reading correctly when it surfaced them. Okay, winner number 1 is Rumble, ticker RUM. We surfaced Rumble on Monday, April 27th at $6.51. The setup was 26% short interest, a Z-score of 3.5, a sentiment at plus 0.34, and an implied volatility rank sitting at 0. Cheap options, heavy short interest, quiet sentiment. Russell 2000 component, the classic short squeeze configuration the system is built to find. Now, Rumble closed Friday at $7.38. That's a 13% gain in 5 trading days. The squeeze math worked. The line we called out at the time was a break even above $7. And that's where the pain trade begins, because where the shorts start covering involuntarily. The stock crossed 7 and held it. What worked here is exactly what the system is designed to surface: quiet sentiment plus heavy short interest plus cheap options plus a small cap label. None of the obvious names, Nobody on financial Twitter was talking about Rumble at the start of the week, but the data was, and that's the trade. So winner number 2 is Intel, ticker INTC. We surfaced Intel on Thursday, April 30th at $34.75. The setup was a Z-score of 8.83 after the stock had already ripped 12.1% on a single session. The unusual options activity detector triggered on a near-term call contract with a volume to open interest ratio of 2.8 to 1. That's the signature of fresh institutional positioning, not retail noise. Intel closed Friday at $99.62. That's another 5% gain in a single session, and it printed an all-time intraday high above $100 on the way there. Now, according to public reporting, Intel had its best month on the NASDAQ in the company's 55-year history, with the stock more than doubling in April alone. We caught the signal late in that move, but the convergence stack told us the institutional flow wasn't done. The follow-through confirmed it. What worked here is a different pattern from Rumble. Intel was a forgotten large cap. The meme stock crowd had moved on years ago. But the options market was telling a story most retail traders were missing, and the system flagged the divergence between the loud tape and the quiet tweets. That gap is where the alpha lives. Now, winner number 3 is Alphabet, Google Class A and Class C. Google was on the watch list Tuesday and Thursday at a Z-score around 14 with a massive call buying on near-term contracts. Volume to open interest at over 2 to 1 on a contract that it already had heavy positioning. Somebody was making a serious bet. Google reported earnings Wednesday after the close, and revenue grew 22% year over year, with Google Cloud up 63% and a $460 billion cloud backlog. The stock ripped about 12% on Friday's session and closed near $385.69. According to public reporting, Alphabet outperformed its Magnificent Seven peers for the month. What worked here is the cleanest setup in the playbook. Unusual options activity on a high liquidity name into a binary catalyst. The convergence stack saw the institutional positioning before the print. The print confirmed the positioning. The stock followed. Now, winner number 4 is Beyond Meat, ticker BYND. We named Beyond Meat as the signal of the day yesterday morning, Friday, May 1st, at a price under $1. 9 signal convergence, 31% short interest, Z-score 8.4, sentiment plus 0.52, the classic squeeze recipe on a small cap that the meme crowd had abandoned. Now, Beyond Meat closed Friday at $1.10 with intraday rallies above 20% at the highs. Now, according to public reporting on May 1st, the stock surged over 20% in a single session on a distribution agreement for a functional beverage line, and continued momentum into earnings on May 6th. The catalyst materialized within hours of the brief locking. What worked here is what worked on Rumble. Heavy short interest plus quiet sentiment plus cheap options plus a near-term catalyst window. The system isn't fortune telling, it's pattern matching. When the same configuration of inputs lines up, the same kind of outcome tends to follow. Now, here's the takeaway for the week. The names that worked all had one thing in common: follow through. Rumble crossed its squeeze trigger and held it. Intel had institutional flow that kept buying after the brief. Google had a binary catalyst that confirmed the positioning, and Beyond Meat had a distribution catalyst that materialized inside the look-ahead window. That's the discipline of the BuzzPulse system. We surface the configuration. The market decides whether or not to honor it. The job to surface the right configuration consistently, document what happened publicly, and let the math work over a large enough sample. That's the BuzzPulse recipe. Now, before I name today's full watch list, the standard reminder: BuzzPulse is a research platform. I'm not your financial advisor. and nothing in this show is investment advice. The names you're going to hear, or the names that you've been hearing, have been flagged today. They're not buy recommendations. So please do your own research always. Now, the first name, of course, is SoundHound. The signal of the day, Z-score 20.1, sentiment plus 0.4, 11-layer convergence with the short interest at 38%, and unusual options activity confirmed. Why it matters? Multi-layer institutional positioning into a high short interest name with confirmed momentum is the classic ingredients for explosive upside if the sentiment holds. What changes conviction if sentiment rolls negative or option flow reverses before earnings, the setup breaks. Now, second name is RIOT, RIOT, a Z-score of 7, sentiment plus 0.42, unusual options activity, short interest 14%. It's a crypto mining proxy with institutional options positioning and constructive sentiment. Why it matters: if Bitcoin continues its run, mining equities with confirmed options flow are the clean plays. What changes conviction: if Bitcoin dominance continues rising and altcoins stay weak, the mining trade loses its secondary catalyst. Now, third name is BMNR, a Z-score 4, sentiment plus 0.19, momentum confirmed. Mid-cap Russell 2000 name with no clear catalyst in the data, just a bear ticker mention. Why it matters: momentum confirmed names with no obvious catalyst sometimes mean something's moving behind the scenes that hasn't surfaced yet. What changes conviction: if no catalyst emerges in the next 48 hours, it's just noise. Now, let's talk about what we're skipping today, because the Greed Score Top 5 gives you the highest alpha potential rankings, but alpha potential without quality gates is just speculation. First on that list is USDC, the stablecoin. Greed Score 0.468, Z-score of 9.7. It's a liquidity event, not a trade. The remaining names on the greed list are crypto miners moving as a correlated cluster with weaker convergence than RIOT, which makes them the tail end of a sector trade rather than independent setups. The watch list tells you where to look. The greed list tells you where the trap is. Now, ahead, non-farm payrolls for April drops a week from today. That's a market-moving macro event, and any new entries or outsized position sizing next Friday carry headline risk into that number. Now, FOMC rate decision is 5 days out on May 7th, which overlaps with SoundHound earnings, so the event risk is stacking. Position sizing into a stacked event window should reflect that headline volatility. Now, everything you heard today was logged from BuzzPulse data as of 1 a.m. Pacific this morning. That's discovery for today. We documented it. The rest is up to you. I'm Ken Carpenter. This is Invest AI Savvy, and that's the way it is.